Hello, this is Hartlick here with the Acid Communists of America. I'm going to read as much as I can read in one sitting from Acid Communism, the Unfinished Introduction by Mark Fisher. If you would like, you can ask me and I'll give you the PDF. It's good to buy the book. I bought the book and I'm reading from the book, but if you feel like you need to read it right away, or if you don't have $30, you should probably set about finding $30 because it's great to have that. But yeah, you should buy the book, but in the meantime, if you need a little help with that PDF, what you can do is you can email acidcommunistofamerica@gmail.com and you should get it automatically, and just let me know if you have any issues opening that file. So, Acid Communism, Unfinished Introduction by Mark Fisher. The specter of a world which could be free. The closer the real possibility of liberating the individual from the constraints once justified by scarcity and immaturity, the greater the need for maintaining and streamlining these constraints, lest the established order of domination dissolve. Civilization has to protect itself against the specter of a world which could be free. In exchange for the commodities that enrich their lives, individuals sell not only their labor, but also their free time. People dwell in apartment concentrations and have private automobiles in which they can no longer escape into a different world. They have huge refrigerators stuffed with frozen foods. They have dozens of newspapers and magazines which espouse the same ideals. They have innumerable choices, innumerable gadgets, which are all of the same sort and keep them occupied and divert their attention from the real issue, which is the awareness that they could both work less and determine their own needs and satisfactions. That epigraph is from Herbert Marcuse, Eros and Civilization. The claim of the book is that the last 40 years have been about the exercising of the, quote, specter of a world which could be free, end quote. Adopting the perspective of such a world allows us to reverse the emphasis of much recent left-wing struggle. Instead of seeking to overcome capital, we should focus on what capital must always obstruct: the collective capacity to produce, care, and enjoy. We on the left have had it wrong for a while. It is not that we are anti-capitalist. It is that capitalism, with all its visored cops, its tear gas, and all the theological niceties of its economics, is set up to block the emergence of this red plenty. The overcoming of capital has to be fundamentally based on the simple insight that, far from being about wealth creation, capital necessarily and always blocks the production of common wealth. The principal, though by no means the sole agent involved in the exorcism of the specter of a world which could be free, is the project that has been called neoliberalism. But neoliberalism's real target was not its official enemies, the decadent monolith of the Soviet bloc and the crumbling compacts of social democracy and the New Deal, which were collapsing under the weight of their own contradictions. Instead, neoliberalism is best understood as a project aimed at destroying, to the point of making them unthinkable, the experiments in democratic socialism and libertarian communism that were efflorescing at the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. The ultimate consequence of the elimination of these possibilities was the condition I have called capitalist realism, the fatalistic acquiescence in the view that there is no alternative to capitalism. If there was a founding event of capitalist realism, it would be the violent destruction of the Allende government in Chile by General Pinochet's American-backed coup. Allende was experimenting with a form of democratic socialism which offered a real alternative to both capitalism and to Stalinism. The military destruction of the Allende regime and the subsequent mass imprisonments and torture are only the most violent and dramatic example of the lengths capital had to go in order to make itself appear to be the only realistic mode of organizing society. It wasn't only that a new form of socialism was terminated in Chile. The country also became a lab in which the measures which would be rolled out in other hubs of neoliberalism, financial deregulation, the opening up of the economy to foreign capital, privatization, were trialed. In countries like the US and the UK, the implementation of capitalist realism was a much more piecemeal affair, involving inducements and seductions as well as repression. The ultimate effect was the same, the extirpation of the very idea of democratic socialism or libertarian communism. The exercising of the specter of a world which could be free was a cultural as well as a narrowly political question. For this specter and the possibility of a world beyond toil was raised most potently in culture, even or perhaps especially in culture which didn't necessarily think of itself as politically oriented. I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm going to return to this in maybe half an hour or something. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to have more little audio videos in which I continue the story of the Acid Communist introduction. I'm almost grateful that it's not a whole book because it's so heavy. These topics are so much to think about. And it's so difficult, really, because I have K-Punk here, and it's so difficult to get very far because the things that he's talking about are just so difficult to process, and it's so emotional just to think about how big the task is to fight our enemies, to fight neoliberalism, to fight the status quo, to fight for acid communist ideas, and it's a big task. But we can do it, and we will.